We'll go ahead and get started with our program tonight. My name is Angie Mack, and I am work in the Reader Engagement Department at Mid-Continent Public Library in the Kansas City area. We want to welcome you to this virtual program. Tonight's program is Mental Wellness is a Muscle with our presenter, Taylor Klein, who is with Beacon Mental Health. So we're happy to offer this program, and we're very glad that all of you could join us tonight. So before I turn things over to Taylor, I am going to have a couple of quick housekeeping reminders for you. If you are a frequent attendee of our virtual programs, you'll know these very well. But if not, I hope these help you out in your as you join us tonight. So I want to first ask you that you go ahead and keep your microphones muted throughout tonight's presentation. That's going to help us hear Taylor, have everyone hear her clearly and without any background noise or feedback from each other's microphones. So go ahead and keep your microphone muted unless we ask you to unmute for any reason. So with that said, I want to remind you that tonight's program is being recorded. So we will have that available, but just wanted to make sure that you know you're in a recorded program. So second, I also want to invite you to ask your questions throughout. If you could do us a favor and put your questions in the chat box. Taylor's going to answer as many as she can after tonight, at the end of tonight's program. So go ahead and throw those questions in there, and they might get answered along the way. We may need a follow-up after the presentation. Whatever the case may be, don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat. Also, we would love to know what you think about tonight's program. We give every attendee an opportunity to give us feedback and evaluation. I'll have a digital evaluation form, and I'll put the link in the chat a couple of times throughout tonight's program. If you could today or tomorrow, go ahead and just take a couple minutes. It takes about 30 seconds to fill out our form, and it gives you a opportunity to put as many comments as you like in there. So please be sure and fill that out as you are watching tonight's program or afterwards. So let's see. I also wanted to finally remind you that I will send a follow-up email tomorrow or as soon as our link to our YouTube video presentation, encore presentation of this video or this program is available. As soon as that YouTube link is up and running and ready to view, I will send that to you in an email with other things like a link to that digital evaluation and reminders of upcoming programs. We hope that this isn't your last, it might be your first program, but we hope this isn't your last virtual program with Mid-Continent. You have opportunities to attend many more. We do have some Christmas programs if that is of interest to you coming up in the month of December, as well as other things throughout the end of the fall and the beginning of the winter season. So I will put some links to some upcoming programs in that email. We have Christmas morning treats with Father Dominic. If you have seen some of our cooking programs, he is a repeat presenter. We have a classic Hollywood Christmas part 2. So you can talk about more Hollywood movies with our friend, Dr. Annette Bohenick. And then unwrapping the charms of the German Christmas traditions. So that is with historian Annette Isaacs. So we have lots of opportunities for more virtual programs coming up very soon. So I will be sending those links to those upcoming programs in that email tomorrow. So without more from me, I will introduce tonight's speaker. So Taylor Klein is a youth suicide prevention specialist with Beacon Mental Health, formerly Tri-County Mental Health. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in History and a Master's in Social Work from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And while she was there, she concentrated on youth mental health and gained valuable experience by working with local child welfare agencies and schools. As a youth suicide prevention specialist, Taylor works with schools and other community partners to provide educational mental health and suicide prevention programs to our local youth and their families. So we are excited to have Taylor here to present Mental Wellness is a Muscle. Taylor, thank you so much for bringing us this program tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me. I always like to give a little spiel about Beacon Mental Health and what we do for those who are not familiar. So Beacon Mental Health, as she said, formerly Tri-County Mental Health Services, is a community mental health center serving Platte, Clay, and Rhea counties. And so we provide mental health services to people regardless of their insurance status, ability to pay. Our main location is over by Maple Woods College, if you were curious. But I am going to be talking about mental wellness and how we can exercise for positive mental well-being. And so this presentation is very much the goal of increasing our mental health literacy and our understanding of mental health. Because when we have that information and we know what tools we can use to support positive mental well-being, we set ourselves up for better future outcomes in general. And I do provide this presentation often in schools to middle school and high school aged youth. But I think this information is valuable to people regardless of their age. Many of us did not have any kind of mental health education when we were in school. It was not something that was available to me. And so regardless of our age, there's always more we can learn and in ways that we can improve our mental wellness and kind of strengthen that muscle. So to get started, our agenda today, we're going to talk about mental health and wellness, what's the difference, why mental wellness matters, and then how to exercise for mental wellness. And then at the end, there's some resources that have also been linked in the chat and will be linked again later in the email that gets sent out. But those are things that if you are interested and want more information or want more ideas of different mental health coping strategies, those are going to be great resources for you to turn to. So what is mental health? It's always important to kind of start out with a basic definition so that we're all on the same page, especially in today's world where there's often a lot of discussion about mental health, and it's not always rooted in the truth and what the facts are about what mental health is and who is affected by it and how much. So it's our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act, and it impacts how we interact with the world around us, make decisions, and handle problems. So it really impacts every aspect of our lives. This is something just kind of get our brains moving and thinking thinking about who has mental health and who needs to work towards positive mental well-being. It is a bit of a trick question when I ask which person has mental health. They all do. When we talk about mental health in our society in today's world, often we're talking about people with specific mental health conditions, and it's usually rooted around their symptoms and how that impacts the way that they engage with the world around them. But the reality is that we all have mental health, and even if we don't have a mental health condition, we can still do things to improve it. And just because we may not have a mental health condition now doesn't mean that we may not develop one later on. So it's always something, just like our physical health, it's important for us to talk about it, be mindful of it, and work towards having overall all positive mental health, just like we do with our physical health. So, and also, I think looking at these three youth, one of them looks like she's pretty happy. The other one maybe kind of smiling a little bit, and the gentleman in the middle looks a little, maybe he's frustrated or disgruntled. But the reality is just because somebody looks happy and smiling does not mean that they aren't struggling or experiencing a mental health condition that we are not aware of. So we don't want to assume that other people don't struggle just because they don't seem like they do, because really it's something that we all deal with. Mental health challenges is a term you might hear me use throughout this presentation. When I use the term mental health condition, this is kind of, you can see mental health challenges as an umbrella term that includes a mental health or substance use disorder or mental health condition, symptoms of mental health or substance use disorders that may not be severe enough for a diagnosis. So not everyone has the same kind of access or availability to mental health services, or maybe there's stigma or different logistical things that prevent them, some barriers that prevent them from seeking out care, a diagnosis, or a treatment. But sometimes people may experience symptoms of a mental health condition that may not be severe enough for them to go and seek a diagnosis, but it is still very much having an impact on their day-to-day life and their ability to do the things that they need to do and the things that they enjoy. Also, this term mental health challenges can include crisis situations like drug overdoses or having thoughts of suicide. So a drug overdose and or having thoughts of suicide, those things are not in themselves mental health conditions, but are often a continuation or a symptom of a mental health condition. So people that have thoughts of suicide are usually struggling with some kind of mental health condition, or they are struggling with coping with stress, and their ability to cope with it does not quite match up to the level of stress that they're experiencing. So this is just a way, this term mental health challenges, to include everybody in the discussion, so that when we talk about mental health, it's not just about people who have mental health conditions that we are able to either see or sense in other ways. Mental health challenges are also not one size fits all, and our understanding of them is constantly changing. So the tool that is often used to diagnose mental health conditions is the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for diagnosing mental health disorders. And the current edition is edition 5, and that was released back in 2014. But before that, then there was the fourth version, and so on and so forth. And so the terms that we use for different mental health conditions have changed. A really common one that I like to use is ADHD, which means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. At one point in time, ADHD and ADD, attention deficit disorder, were considered two different diagnoses. But over the years, we learned that actually it's really just ADHD, and there are different ways that people might experience that condition, different symptoms. So now it's the hyperactivity subtype, and then there's the type that is a little bit more issues with the attention and getting distracted. So many different kinds of mental health disorders, and each one has different ways of affecting people. So just because two people maybe have the same condition, both are diagnosed with something like depression, does not mean that they're going to have the exact same experiences with it. We all come from different backgrounds and environments, and have different kinds of supports and resources are available to us. So just because one person experiences a condition one way does not mean that somebody else with the same condition is going to have the exact same experiences, and or that the same treatments are going to be working for them and appropriate for them. So just being mindful not to judge and assume that just because we experience something one way does not mean that other people can't experience in a different way. There are a few case studies that I like to include in this presentation. In this first one, we have a student, a young lady named Amber. Amber has asthma. Amber tries to get 8 hours of sleep and eat healthy. She runs 10 miles a week and is a member of her high school soccer team. Amber writes in her gratitude journal and practices meditation every night before bed. So knowing this information, would you think that Amber is unhealthy? We're not going to do as much participation in this as I would if I was in a more physical setting. But I would say that just because Amber has asthma does not mean that she is unhealthy. She's clearly taking her medication there. She's using her inhaler, and she's very active. She eats healthy. She gets plenty of sleep, and she's doing some things that are nourishing and good for her brain and her mental health, like writing in a gratitude journal and practicing meditation before bed. So, just because somebody has a physical health condition does not mean that they are necessarily unhealthy if they're doing the things that they need to do to care for that condition. So just like we all have physical health, we all have mental health. On the other hand, though, mental wellness is the result of us investing in our mental health and the things that we can do to improve it. So mental health is kind of, we're kind of stuck with it. We can't escape the fact that we have mental health. Mental wellness, though, is something that we do have control over. We can work to actively improve our mental health and over time change the different strategies that we might use, self-care and healthy coping skills. If something's not working for us anymore, we try to find something new. So it is something that we can kind of strengthen and think of as a muscle. So mental wellness is an internal renewable resource, meaning we all have it. It comes from inside. It's an active process. So we got to always be working at it. And it's not, we can think of it like a muscle. So just like, babies are not born with, looking like Dwayne The Rock Johnson or John Cena, where they're very muscular and very buff and built out. Actually, over time, they have to, obviously as the baby gets older and can even pick up weights or run, that's something you have to work towards to build up those muscles and to get to that level of strength. Just like we're not born with the ability to just know how to cope with life's challenges or stresses. It's something that we do have to work towards and strengthen over time. The case study example, this is Henry. Henry is living with an anxiety disorder. Henry realized that certain things makes his anxiety worse, like when he doesn't get enough sleep or when he skips meals, drinks a lot of caffeine, and certain situations like public speaking and social events can also trigger his anxiety. Now Henry tries to get 8 hours of sleep and he avoids skipping meals and limits his caffeine intake. And then on a day-to-day basis to deal with that stress that he maybe is experiencing, he takes his dog for walks and practices yoga and meditation. In moments when his anxiety is particularly bad, Henry uses deep breathing exercises and keeps a journal to track his feelings so he can identify situations that make him feel anxious ahead of time and prepare for them. So if he always gets really anxious when he has to go up and present in front of his classmates for school, he can try to practice meditation beforehand, use some of those deep breathing exercises, use a grounding technique like the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. So he's taking some of that uncertainty out of it and gives him a sense of kind of control over something that can feel very, very scary, not knowing if it's going to happen or not. So again, kind of the same question as with Amber, would we say that Henry is mentally unwell just because he has an anxiety disorder? I would not say that he is unwell. He is doing the things that he needs to do to make sure that not only his body is healthy, but that he's being mindful of his mental health and how different situations and things interact with it, and has strategies he can use to cope with that anxiety. So I would say that he's pretty healthy overall, given the circumstances. So why does mental wellness matter? So why do we have to work towards having positive mental well-being? Why do we gotta learn to deal with stress in healthy ways? Well, to be a fully healthy, happy human, we got to have both a healthy body and a healthy mind. For a long time, doctors, researchers, society in general really kind of focused on the body part of that equation. Working towards dealing with different physical health conditions, an emphasis on healthy eating and fitness and different things like that. And the brain and mental health, it was often seen as very separate from the body and the physical health, where, there are different mental health centers, different offices, doctors' offices that are responsible for dealing with mental health, and they're completely separate from, some place that you would get treatment for a physical health condition. But the reality is that the brain is an organ in the body, just like the heart or the lungs. And if we're not taking care of the brain and making sure that the brain is healthy, and by extension, taking care of our mental health, then there can be long-term consequences because of that. And if our mental health is not doing so great, that can actually have a negative impact on our physical health as well. There are many chronic health conditions, terminal health conditions, where stress and in that mental health piece does have a huge impact on whether a person's symptoms will relapse or not. And at the same time, if you're not feeling good mentally, maybe you're dealing with some grief, you've been feeling really sad or frustrated and anxious for a long period of time, you're not going to probably feel very good physically because of that. And vice versa. So if our physical health is not doing so great, we just, dealing with chronic pain, fatigue, dealing with different digestive system problems. We might feel a little frustrated and easily irritated, and a little bit grumpier, because these things are very deeply interconnected. We have to make sure we are taking care of both the physical piece and the mental health piece. And part of that is talking about stress. So, stress is a part of life, as much as I'm sure many, if not all of us, would wish that we could never have to deal with stress again. It's impossible to not experience stress. And there's a very important reason for that. So, stress and the stress response, which is the release of cortisol in the body, is something that humans developed as a way to keep us safe and away from dangerous situations. So an example I like to use is early humans were primarily hunters and gatherers. So their job was to go out and get food either by hunting or gathering, different vegetation as a way to feed themselves and their families and their communities. And if a hunter goes out and they encounter a predator like a bear or a lion or something like that, that stress hormone is released when the body knows that it's unsafe, it's in a dangerous situation, and that activates adrenaline and it gets the body primed and ready to go if we do need to get away from that situation to keep ourselves safe. So stress does play a really important role in keeping us safe and healthy and away from danger. And I'd argue that it's, part of what has made humans the most advanced species on Earth, because we are able to kind of use that tool as a way to keep ourselves safe and our communities thriving. And so what that stress is, it's your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. And even if we are not in a situation where we're actually unsafe and in danger, it can still occur when an event or thought makes you angry, frustrated, or nervous. So if you're experiencing a lot of intense anger or anxiety, the body responds to that and perceives that as I'm in danger, I'm unsafe. And so it releases the stress hormone as a way to activate us towards doing what we need to do to keep ourselves safe, whether that's fight, flight, or freeze. But not all stress is bad. Some stress can be positive. So if we're in a new place or we've met a new person or taking a challenging class or taking on a new hobby or skill we've never done before, that's unknown to us, that can feel kind of uncomfortable and scary because there is that, it is an unknown and there's kind of that sense of a lack of control over what can happen to us. And so even though we're not in danger and it's not necessarily a negative thing, it can still activate that stress response and we might feel a little nervous, a little anxious. But if we stop, engaging in those things, so if we experience stress and we meet a new person, and instead of, interacting with that person and trying to develop a relationship, or instead of trying to work towards building our ability in a different skill or a different field, that we just kind of give up and say, no, this is scary, it doesn't feel good, so I'm not even going to try. Then we close ourselves off from a whole world of opportunities to grow as people and to also have, a positive impact on others around us. So we got to kind of train ourselves to not immediately, when we do experience that stress response, when something positive is happening, we got to try to prevent ourselves from completely just kind of giving up and walking away and try to persevere, and knowing that it's ultimately probably going to be something that's positive for us. Too much stress, though, whether it is good or bad, can become toxic stress. So when the body has released too much of the stress hormone and it builds up, it can have a serious impact on different ways that our bodies function. Some of the different ways that we might feel or experience that stress in the body. We might have trouble sleeping. We might feel really exhausted. So even though we have slept, we just didn't get very good sleep. Headaches, dizziness or shaking, stomach or digestive problems. So if anybody, if you get really nervous and your stomach hurts or you feel nauseous, that is an example of stress showing itself in the body. High blood pressure is a big one as well. A lot of people get really stressed when and their blood pressure goes up when they're in the hospital or in doctor's office settings. We call that white coat syndrome, where the blood pressure is high in those settings specifically, but if they leave the doctor's office, then it goes back down to a more normal level. That is because when we are in a hospital or a doctor's office, it can kind of trigger that feeling of like, ooh, maybe I'm unsafe because there aren't always, hospitals and doctors' offices aren't always a place where good, exciting things happen. So people kind of internalize that fear of the unknown and uncertainty. Unexplained aches or pains, so tension in the jaw or the neck. If you're, one way I know I'm under a lot of stress, maybe if I haven't really been paying attention, is if I feel like I'm just clenching my jaw and grinding my teeth together a lot, or I'm holding a lot of tension in my neck and shoulders. So those are places that we might hold that stress in the body. And then also too much stress, that toxic stress can weaken our immune system. So it makes it harder for our bodies to fight off viruses or diseases. It can make healing harder as well. So I always challenge people to, if maybe in our day-to-day we're just kind of busy, go, 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 we've got a lot going on. We're not really taking the time to sit and reflect and be and think about, pay attention to how we're feeling. Maybe we're ignoring some of those signs of stress that we're just kind of experiencing mentally. Keep an eye out for some of these more physical signs of stress because that can show you if it's affecting the rest of the body, then it's probably a lot more stress than the body can really handle. And it might be an opportunity to stop and try to do something to reduce it. When it comes to stress, we can think of our bodies as a cup. So over time in our day-to-day lives, stress can fill your cup up. So whether, it's expectations at work, we've got a lot of responsibilities caring for children or family members. Maybe we're dealing with, medical issues or financial issues. There are many different things that can build, lift up that our level of stress in the body and make it so that it gets to the point where we have a hard time coping with it altogether. So if the cup's kind of half full, where we've got a lot going on, but for the most part, we're, kind of still able to do what we need to do. It's not really affecting us too much to the point where it's really negatively impacting us. But if you get to the point where the cup is full or it's overflowing altogether, the body goes into kind of a survival mode. So it senses that, oh, I'm in danger, I'm unsafe, I've got a lot of stress on me, and it can get to the point where even just trying to think of what you can do to feel better can be difficult, if not impossible, because the brain is so overloaded with that stress and can't process information that's coming in, and it has a hard time making decisions and acting on that information it's receiving. So stress can fill up the cup over time, but we can learn to empty our cups. So maybe we're not able to empty the cup altogether, and chances are we're not going to be able to. Again, stress is a part of life, and it's really kind of about trying to maintain that balance to where we're not letting that stress have too much of a negative impact on us, but we're not preventing ourselves from doing things that we enjoy or engaging in new experiences because of our fear of experiencing that stress. So the cup, we can try to empty it by using self-care and healthy coping skills. And I will talk about what these things are in a moment. Chances are you've heard self-care before, you've heard about coping skills, but the way that society and often people that are trying to sell you products talk about self-care is not actually what self-care is. Oftentimes it's, self-care is buying this product that we're trying to sell you so we can make money to feel better and not actually about what's going to be helpful or beneficial for you. So we can use those self-care and healthy coping skills to empty our cups. How do we exercise for mental wellness? So I introduced the mental wellness topic a little bit earlier and talked about why mental wellness matters. Now we talk about what can we do to have positive mental wellness and what are some of the things that we can practice and implement in our day-to-day lives to make sure that we are keeping ourselves happy and healthy regardless of what's going on. So first is to learn to notice and identify your emotions and feelings. Practice self-care daily is number 2. 3, use coping skills when we're feeling overwhelmed. And then 4, know when and where to get help. So when is kind of those self-help practices, when are they no longer going to be effective and we really need to get to a mental health professional who can address some things that maybe we're not able to do on our own. So the first part of that is learn to notice and identify your emotions and feelings. This might seem kind of, oh, this is kind of silly. Why are we talking about this? This is super basic stuff. Reason why is because one, we use the terms emotions and feelings very interchangeably. So they don't mean the same thing, but we are often using them as if they do mean the same thing. And knowing what that connection is and why they're different is an important part of being able to identify them and respond to them in healthy ways. So emotions are associated with bodily reactions, and it's a direct response to something going on in our environment. So thinking back to the example of hunters and gatherers in early human history, they would see a predator and then the body would release the stress hormone in response as a way to let us know that, okay, we need to get moving and do something to keep ourselves safe. That is an immediate response to what's going on. There's no time for you to sit and think and ponder on, am I unsafe or not? The body is taking in different information from our 5 senses and is saying, okay, we're unsafe, we got to do something about it. You don't have any control over your emotions. They just are what they are. And they're related to different things like dopamine and cortisol, and I'm blanking on what it is, but oxytocin, which is what is released went through like human touch. So it's something that, when babies are born, you're supposed to kind of have that skin to skin contact because that releases oxytocin for the mother and the baby, and it calms them both down. So emotions are very much rooted in biological processes that are happening, in a split second. On the other hand, feelings are our conscious experiences of our emotional reactions and is also what our mind labels that emotion. And they can be influenced by our mental stories of the past or fears of the future. So, one example that I like to use is some people have a lot of fear, anxiety about going to the dentist. I think it's fairly reasonable, considering they're, poking and prodding you in a very sensitive part of the body. They're usually shining bright lights in your face and, they're trying to talk to you while they have their hands in your mouth, which is always an interesting dynamic. So even if you've, never really had any, you don't have anything that you're really concerned about, like, oh, I brush twice a day, I floss every day, I use mouthwash, like my teeth are really healthy, I don't have to worry about any cavities or things, needing to be pulled. But if you had a negative experience at the dentist in the past, so maybe say you did have a cavity you had to get filled, or your tooth you needed to have pulled, even if you know and you're telling yourself like, I have nothing to worry about, it's all right, I'll be okay regardless, no reason to stress about it, your body is still remembering those past experiences. And so there's always kind of the underlying thought of, oh, well, remember the last time it wasn't so great. Maybe this could turn out to be the same case in this next instance. So our emotions are something that we just kind of second. It happens right away. We don't have any control. Feelings are how we respond or label that emotion. Emotions are not good or bad. There are good and bad ways of expressing them. Avoiding negative feelings or pretending we don't feel the way we do can backfire. So when I say emotions are not good and bad, I mean it's okay to feel angry or frustrated. There are some people who their response if somebody does get angry is to say, "Oh no, don't get angry." It very much is kind of that message of kind of keep it to yourself and lock it up inside and just kind of hope it goes away on its own. But it's not healthy for us to not experience anger for feeling angry. But there are good and bad ways we could respond to our anger. If we're trying to find a healthy outlet for it, like, trying to get some exercise or writing out how we feel and then tearing the note up or something like that, or typing up an email and then deleting it, not sending it. If instead of doing that, we are lashing out at others or doing something that might harm ourselves, that's obviously not a very good or good way of responding to that feeling. So it's okay to feel the way that we do, but we need to make sure we're not going to harm ourselves or others in the process of responding to that. This is a helpful tool that can kind of show how these different emotions and feelings are connected. You can find different versions of this online. You can Google the feelings wheel, the emotion wheel. Different versions might have different emotions in the center there. You've got those core emotions, but ultimately it just kind of it's how different people interpret it. But this just shows that, we've got our core emotions there. We've got anger, fear, love, sadness, surprise, joy. And then there's different ways, different feelings that we might use to label that emotion or how we respond to it or experience it. So something like anger. Anger is the emotion, but we might be feeling disgust, or we might be feeling envious, uh, irritable, rage. Those are all very different ways of experiencing the same emotion, anger. Another one is, fear. Fear, insecurity is an extension of fear. So we've got the fear is the core emotion, but your feeling might be insecurity or a sense of inferiority or not feeling adequate enough. Whereas maybe if we're feeling frightened or helpless, it's a little bit different than feeling mortified. So this is just kind of a way, and it's especially useful with younger, with kids as well. If for them to be able to, if they can't verbalize or truly, have the words or the means to say what they're feeling or experiencing, it might be easier for them to be able to point at it on a wheel like this. So this is our final case study. So this is Jamie. Jamie has no history of mental health challenges. During Jamie's 8th grade school year, her mom was diagnosed with cancer. Jamie had to help her mom by taking care of her younger siblings while her dad works. And to be closer to where her mom received her cancer treatment, her family moved to a new town in the middle of the school year. So at her new school, Jamie had to get extra help from her teachers to catch up, and she missed her old friends a lot, but started hanging out with a new group of kids out after school. Ever since she started hanging out with those kids, though, she's been skipping class, drinking alcohol, and vaping nicotine e-cigarettes. So vapes, would be the more common terminology for that. So kind of similar to those last two case studies, I asked, is Jamie mentally unwell? Even though she doesn't have a history of mental health challenges. And, caveat there is that just because she doesn't have a history does not mean that she doesn't have one or may not develop one later on. Perhaps she just has never, um, reached out or sought a diagnosis for something like that for a variety of reasons. But as far as we know, Jamie does not have a mental health condition, that has been diagnosed. But she's got a lot of stressors. She's got a lot of things, big things going on in her life. Her mom was diagnosed with a serious health condition, cancer. She has to take on the responsibility as, a 13, 14-year-old to take care of her younger siblings while dad works. And then she's also had to move to a new town and a new school in the middle of the school year. And it's her eighth grade school year, which eighth grade to ninth grade is a pretty significant transition age. So there are a lot of youth who already struggle in that time period because of that transition from middle school to high school. And then now she's having to feel, to get extra help from teachers to catch up. So she feels, there may be that feeling of inferiority or inadequacy because she does need that extra help. And because she wants to feel like belongs and it is accepted in this new school, she started hanging out with a group of new friends, which is great, but those friends are not engaging in very healthy behaviors. And these are things that maybe might feel good in the moment, skipping class, drinking alcohol, vaping, but they're not addressing why she feels that way in the first place. And ultimately will probably have negative consequences in the future if she continues down that route. So, kind of wrapping up that case study, the case study portion of this presentation, we had the first example was a youth with a physical health condition who was still healthy regardless. The second one was a youth with a mental health challenge, a mental health condition, anxiety disorder, that is still healthy because he's doing the things that he needs to do to cope with those symptoms. And then our last one was a youth who does not have a mental health condition as far as we know, but has a lot of things going on in her life, a lot of stressors, and is having a hard time coping with it, regardless of whether she has a mental health condition. So, the next piece of that, what we can do to exercise for mental wellness is after we learn to notice and identify emotions and feelings, also practicing self-care daily, and then using healthy coping skills when we need them. Self-care, we can think of as things we can do to achieve and maintain mental wellness. It is a restorative and preventative process that when we are doing it regularly, ideally daily, but if we're busy and we just can't do it daily as much as we can, that we can hopefully kind of keep our cup levels lower to where our stress is not having too much of an impact on our overall health. And hopefully prevent us from our cups overflowing in the future. So if you think of yourself as a car, self-care is the regularly scheduled maintenance or things that you need to do to keep maintain your car and make sure that it continues to run and take you to where you need to go. So making sure it has fuel, whether that is gasoline or with an electric vehicle, charging it, with electricity, making sure our tires have air in them, wiper fluid so that we're able to use our wipers, things like that, that aren't, super intense or super, much of a big deal. But if we don't do those things, then we could possibly end up in a situation where, we're stuck on the side of a highway in the middle of nowhere, because our tires went flat or we ran out of gas. So got to do them regularly. And chances are, you're already doing some of the self-care things to support your physical health. So there are different dimensions of self-care. There's more than five, but these are kind of the core ones. Some of the other self-care dimensions examples I've seen also have, occupational, so something that's really focused around work in the workplace, and workplace self-care. But for this, it's just kind of the basics. It's physical self-care, so how we eat, move, and rest, making sure to get plenty of healthy food, eating 3 meals a day, drinking enough water, getting enough healthy sleep, exercising as well. Mental self-care, so how we think. Do we try to have kind of a growth mindset and see, mistakes or failures or setbacks that we experience in life as opportunities for us to grow and become a better version of ourselves instead of maybe seeing it as a reflection on our character. So just because somebody fails a test doesn't mean that they're a failure or a loser. It just means that maybe next time they need to study a little bit more, or maybe this is not a subject that they're good in, but there are other subjects that they are good in. Social, so how we connect with others. Do we have people that we can talk to about things going on in our lives? Sounding boards that we can use to talk about our struggles when we need support. Spiritual, how we illuminate our inner truth. So this can be religion, but it doesn't have to be. It really just means kind of reflecting and taking the time to think about what is important to us in life. What are our values? What do we feel like nourishes our soul and helps us kind of get through our day-to-day lives? So whether it's, sitting down and reflecting on what those values are, or engaging in, volunteer work or things to give back to the community. And then emotional. So how we express ourselves. Do we bottle our emotions up, or are we trying to find healthy ways that we can express our emotions through art, dance, sports, music, baking, gardening? There are many different ways that we can try to express our emotions in healthier ways. Coping skills. So on the other side of that is we've got our self-care, so things that we should be doing regularly. Coping skills are things that we can do, strategies we can use when we're experiencing tough times, different challenges. So really something you kind of use in the moment when you're struggling with maybe a lot of stress or feeling really anxious or angry or sad. So they can be used to help manage painful or difficult emotions, change negative ways of thinking. So coping skills are the steps that you would take when your car has a problem. So if you have a nail in your tire, you're going to have to either patch it up or get a new tire. If you are having issues with your engine or different aspects of your vehicle, you got to go and get those things fixed because if you don't, then you can't drive your car. So those, another way to kind of think about it is self-care could be kind of like a vitamin. You take a vitamin on a daily basis, regardless of if, you're dealing with an illness or something like that. Whereas coping skills would be like, if you have a cold, then you would take cough medicine or use cough drops or something like that. There are unhealthy and healthy coping skills. So unhealthy coping skills tend to feel good in the moment, but can have long-term consequences. So they are not usually addressing why you feel that way or what that emotion is you're experiencing or the things that have influenced that emotion. And because of that, they're, ultimately probably gonna have long-term negative consequences. So that does include drug or alcohol use, procrastination, self-harm, aggression. On the other hand, there's healthy coping skills, so they either lead to the problem being resolved or at least dealt with in a way that reduces stress or harm. So even if you can't eliminate the problem altogether, at least trying to find ways to cope with it that are healthy, that are not going to cause greater harm and are actually responding to what you're experiencing and the root causes of why you feel that way. So it can be things like exercise, talking to people around you when you need support, using different relaxation techniques like mindfulness or breathing strategies, problem-solving techniques. So trying to address the problem that is causing those negative feelings. Uh, Different self-care and coping strategies that we can use are mindfulness techniques like yoga and meditation. So yoga really is just kind of controlled stretching and breathing. So it combines that physical pose with controlled breathing and meditation or relaxation. So you're not just kind of going through the motions, but you're paying attention to how it's making your body feel and really leaning into the different stretches, and focusing solely on that and not, what am I going to eat tomorrow night or what am I going to do this weekend? And the more you practice things like yoga and meditation is really just kind of trying to clear the mind and focus on what we're feeling and experiencing around us and not letting the mind wander. The more we do those things, the better we get at being able to kind of rein in those negative feelings when they come up, and feel a little bit more in control of ourselves. Some other mindfulness strategies are breathing and grounding techniques. Earlier I mentioned the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. That's what this is on the left side. So especially if you are finding you're kind of dwelling on a lot of negative thoughts, you're a worrier and you can't really stop worrying, or focusing on those things, this is a way to kind of ground ourselves and bring ourselves back to just focusing on the here and now, what's going on, what we're feeling, and we're sensing. And that can help kind of reduce that distress and get us back to more of a state of equilibrium. Belly breathing and 4-7-8 breathing are some breathing strategies as well. Belly breathing is really key because to get the full, deep breaths that we need to be able to function, we need to make sure that we are getting enough air into our lungs. And if our bellies are not expanding and doing a lot of that work, then we're not going to be able to get those deep breaths in. And that's because of the diaphragm, which is under the lungs, that has to expand to be able to make the lungs expand as well. So that plays a key role in making sure that we are maybe not dealing with, hyperventilating or kind of that panic mode. This is something that is more geared towards youth when I do this presentation, but on the other hand, for adults, it's just important to know that, the youth in your life really kind of look to you, and adults around you for guidance, and is really kind of the gatekeepers to the resources that they may need. And knowing that the youth knowing that they have an adult that they can go to talk to about anything, whether they're worried about themselves or a friend, and they don't, maybe they're worried about getting in trouble or being judged. If they know that they have someone they can go to, don't have to worry about being judged at all. They can have that conversation and get the help that they need. They're going to be much more likely to open up, and talk about what's going on with them. These are some helpful resources. There's, of course, Beacon's crisis 24-hour crisis line that we've got there in our website. Some of the links on the right side, Encourage Hope and Help, Grow Strong KC, and Parent Up, I linked towards the beginning, and that'll also be included in the follow-up email. But there are a lot of really great resources about mental health, substance use prevention, suicide prevention on those resource sites. So I definitely recommend checking them out. If you want more information, I always like to highlight the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline as well. So that's a 3-digit number, 988, and you can call, text, or chat online with a trained crisis counselor, and it's available 24/7, free. It's completely confidential, and you don't have to be in crisis to talk to 988. Ideally, we want people to reach out to 988 before they're in a crisis. So if you're just really stressed out or feeling really anxious, or frustrated and you need someone to talk to vent to, or to give you suggestions of things that you can do, coping skills and strategies to try, 988 is a great resource. And if you do feel like you need professional help from a mental health professional, 988 can get you connected to them. In some cases, with a mobile response team, they can actually pick you up and take you to the place that you need to go. So that wraps up my presentation for today. So this is email address there, that info@encouragehopeandhelp.com. Those emails get sent directly to my my email at Beacon Mental Health. So if you do reach out there, then you will get into contact with me if you had any questions. And you're also always welcome to reach out to Beacon Mental Health for any of your mental health needs as well. But that wraps up the presentation. We've got about 5 minutes left for any questions. There are, if we don't cover all of them here, then we can, you're welcome to follow up and contact me as well. Did we have any questions, Angie?
Well, we had a comment saying that they appreciated your being sure to point out the difference between emotions and feelings. So they always have to look that up, and that distinction really helped them on that. So
Awesome.
if anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Thank you for the links, Taylor. We appreciate that. Always appreciate for more information type of thing. So links for local organizations that might help, or you might be able to volunteer or help out, or is there
Yeah.
any resource, like any author that you really find helpful, or any book that you've read recently, Taylor, that you're enjoying or think is
Um,
valuable?
I used to be a big reader, but I don't do as much reading now in my adult life as I used to. But I mean, Brene Brown, Gabor Mate, um, there's a really good book about The Body Keeps the Score by Vanderkolk. I can't remember the first name, but I always blank on that one. Really good book about trauma and the ways that the body holds trauma, and ways that we, even if we can't remember it, our bodies do remember it. A lot of really good resources there. Um, let's see. That's kind of what's coming to mind,
Mhm.
off the top of my head, but
I would also encourage those that have found something in tonight's program you want to learn more about, be sure and reach out to your local librarian at your local branch. So we have a lot of great readers, advisories, librarians and staff, and they're very good at taking a topic and running with it and finding new resources, both online and in print. So be sure and reach out to them if there's a topic you want to learn more about. So I don't have any other questions, so we can go ahead and wrap up tonight's program. Taylor, thank you so much for this program. Thank you for attending. If you did, don't forget that I will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who registered, and with the link, so you can pass this presentation along to your friends and family that might help out. And we hope to see you in another program very soon. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
You too. Thank you. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Taylor. We'll see you next time.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks. Bye.